we've had me go through an alter ego practice for the past couple of months, like leading up to us having this conversation.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that there probably couldn't have been a better thing for me to do, not only
Mhm.
from a performance standpoint, but just for like honestly a little bit of fun,
Yeah.
right? And just
Yeah.
pulling out your best self.
Yeah.
Ultimately, like pulling the best version of you out onto the court and honestly in life, because you're able to have this check in, check out process that allows you to also reset for the rest of your daily life, meaning you're not always going to be on the court performing at an extremely high level and need to have a certain attitude. Like you have family involved, friends involved, you have to go out, you socialize, right? You develop human connection. Like me going out and being in a competitive environment while I'm trying to have a beer with one of my friends is probably not the thing to do, right?
Not the time to intimidate. Not the
Not
time.
They're probably going to get me in a bar fight. So not
Yeah.
the time to do it. Exactly.
Yeah.
So with that being said, it's really dominoed into other aspects of my life as well. So I know that we wanted to do this kind of live, right? To
Yeah.
give everybody like an insight on how do I actually build an alter ego. But
Hmm.
where I'm going to have you start is where that strategy as a whole came from and
Yeah.
why you've seen it be so impactful in so many athletes today.
Yeah. So, like I alluded to before, my mentor, Todd Herman, wrote the book, The Alter Ego Effect. Alter ego, the idea itself, has been around for a long time. And there's like shadow self, true self. And the premise of the exercise is just to create a contrast. It's to be intentional about how we want to show up and what traits and the approach to that area of life or field of play. And so, and you highlighted it pretty nice. Is like because who you want to be out on the field of play, like in the sport, probably not the same in other areas. Like it's different situations, pull different traits. So it's not. And I remember my first reaction when I read the cover or I saw his book Alter Ego Effect. I was like, that sounds stupid. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I was like, alter ego. I was like, aren't egos things we want to avoid? Like I was
Yeah.
like multiple personality. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I was like, so I was like, my initial reaction was like, oh, like, and I didn't read it right away. And then eventually I was like, oh, like this like seems like a pretty good guy. I'll read it. Like I was like, oh, I get it now. Like it's just a tool to be more intentional and what traits you're pulling up. It's not to like change the aspect of who you are and it's actually just a very helpful tool if you try it out and you use the word fun and playful. The tool is very big for personalizing it. It's a very practical tool, very personalized. It's no two people are having the same alter ego. Like the most famous one in the world and one of the most famous mindsets and the most legendary mindsets is the Black Mamba, who
Yeah.
Todd helped Kobe create the Black Mamba. And so what did that do? It, you think of his career, the Black Mamba was always there. Right. And so and even the term like best self, it's like true self is another alternative option. It's like,
Mm,
it's the real you. It's the one
I
that's
like that.
there. But then sometimes we get into, the Superman Clark Kent analogy of like, we get into like Clark Kent mode. And it's like, but Superman's always there. Superman is the true you. Like Kobe always had the Black Mamba in there. He just wasn't as intentional about it before. Right. So when we get into your alter ego, it's like, that's always been there. But now you can be more intentional about activating and stepping into it and being clear on who you don't want to be out there, which is if you want to be like intimidating and attacking, yet calm, like a calm, intimidating presence, like kind of sounds a bit also, I'll throw this out there. I know you gave me a bit of an idea what it might be, but there was a golfer, his was uh, the silent assassin. So he's like just this
Okay.
like unknowingly guy, but he was a killer. Like, you know what I mean? It's like he's not a big guy, he's a smaller guy, but he had very selfish and he was just cold blooded. He was just cool as a cucumber, like kill mode. And then to be like where some guys show up, they're like, look how great I am. He's like, no, I'm silent, calm, quiet, very. So anyways, it's just kind of interesting to talk about the cool and calm part. So
Yeah.
um but anyways, now I forget where I was going with all that, but yeah. So it's forget the initial questions, but yeah, very impactful exercise. So
So it just as a whole, and this is where I want to emphasize, and we'll get into it. This is it does pull out, and this is the frame that you gave that I like better, as you said it, your true self.
Hmm.
So, what I was going to relate to as you were saying that is I think everybody has those days out on the court where if it is golf, you feel like you could play at a pro level, right? You go out there, you shoot, let's say it's a 77 in amateur retrospect, and you're like, if I keep practicing at this, I could play pretty good. But then you have a day where you shoot an 89, 95, even 100, and you're like, what the hell? What is this big gap between the
Yeah.
two outcomes?
Yeah.
And to your point, it's the intentionality about pulling your true self out more often.
Yeah.
And you even went back to feeding the wolves, right? It's about feeding less the
Yeah.
wolf that's involved in fear and feeding more of what your capabilities are in
Yeah.
totality. So that's really what I wanted to emphasize there. I love the frame, which is more of rather than your best self, it's your true self,
Yeah.
because I think every athlete can relate to you have those days on the court where you know you are meeting your true potential and you just
Hmm.
want more of that.
Yeah.
So this is really what helps you employ more of that.
Yeah.
So how do you want to start it?
Let me add one more thing,
Yeah.
just briefly. A lot
Yeah.
of mindset and the work and acceptance and the commitment is talking how you want to talk to yourself. You want to talk to yourself this way and not that
Mm,
way, right? You want to accept and commit and don't beat yourself up and worry. But what's really helpful with this exercise and what's often even more important than talking to yourself is how you talk about yourself. And
mm,
a
okay.
huge mistake people will make is they identify with the mindsets that are holding them back. I am somebody with a confidence problem. Says who? You're saying that about yourself. How we talk about ourselves matter. And it's like, so the alter ego is like, it's to be clear, like, this is not who I am. Maybe I've had a tendency to be afraid and not attack or do this, but that's not who you are. You get to choose and you write your own story. You're the author of your own story in your life. You're not just what you do, think, or feel, or achieve. And so we want to be very mindful when we talk about ourselves. We use absolutes like I always this, I am that, I never like be careful. Like like I hear somebody say that, I'm like, oh, like you're creating a self-perpetuating prophecy and cycle. So it's like, we draw the line of sand, like this is now that's your true self or your best self or your heroic self and courageous version. And it's just being intentional about what that looks like and activates it. And then knowing like I am not this. Maybe I've done this. You're human. And like the wolf, the fear of wolves, whatever there. But so into like now diving into it, because I know you've done a little bit of homework on it. What are
Yeah.
the traits? Like, what are the things that matter most to your game? Does that make sense on how you want to play? So there's like moments of impact and there's traits within those moments. So we can go into the moments of impact, or we can even just, it'd probably be a bit easier to go a bit of both, but on a high level, like what are the traits that you really want that matter and the ones you don't want? And then if you can also even tie that into like key moments, like serving versus returns or thirds or, adversity. What comes to mind here?
Yeah, so trying to tie it into some of the key moments that you represented, and we'll start with so for me, totally like before the game, super key moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that because me being, as I mentioned before, a very emotionally in tune individual.
Yeah.
If I don't start employing that before the game, I'll lead that right into the game, meaning those fears, those anxieties, etc. When we talk about like who your worst self is, if I
Yeah.
don't employ that before the game, it'll drag me right into there,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then before you know it, a game is over and it's like you're just getting into your groove. So totally before the game is a high level of impact for me.
Yeah.
Now that also leads into what we just talked about, which for me, I believe, give me a second. So on your diagram, which once again, anybody listening to audio, we're going to put this on there, and I'll even put some links to it so you can download it yourself. Uh, there's a confidence spectrum on there, right?
Mm-hmm.
What really one of them being what is like certainty or swagger.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think you defined it as yes. So this relates to what you're just talking about too. Is really owning your capabilities,
Yeah.
right? So you talked about how you talk to yourself, right? Really owning your greatness, what you can do, owning your capabilities. for me driving in there, and this is where it will relate to who my alter ego is as well. It's owning that. It's knowing that I've put in the work today. I've put in the work up until this point. I know that I can do this, and I know I have the ability to do it. So that's really the
Mhm.
first thing to start, like that
Yeah.
swagger piece for me,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Um, the second piece of that, which I would say is also related to before the game,
Mhm.
is that calmness. So we talked about as well of like having more patience, me being more somewhere between like patient and relaxed, right?
Yeah.
Which for me is truly being calm because I already know the person that I am. I'm over energized on the excitement half.
Mhm.
So I'm a person where I walk in and my fire is already too high.
Mhm.
So I may need a little bit more water consistently than other people do. So
Mhm.
that calmness in my alter ego is super, super huge for me.
Mhm.
And then the last piece is what we talked about with I need a perspective lens
Mhm.
is knowing that this is somewhere between process driven and really a growth. You have it on here under like a leadership avenue, a growth mindset.
Mhm.
And the reason is that being is because when I zoom out and I take a perspective lens, I know the intent of me playing is not only because I love the game, it's because I'm coming in here with the intent to learn at a very high level so that I can share that with others. And then
Mhm.
also when it comes to the Fail First project, it's like driving the narrative, driving the purpose that you failing more frequently and faster is only going to allow you to learn more and rapidly and ultimately grow longer or grow more over an extended period of time. So those are
Mhm.
really the couple of the three main things for me when it comes to before the game, which is totally one of the biggest moments for me.
Yeah. And I would we could even split that up
Okay.
to there's your before the game, you want to feel calm, relaxed, patient, or some kind of a mix. There's a general demeanor before, let alone during, of having that certainty, swagger, and owning your capabilities. And then there's also how you define before, but also during, and especially after success and failure. So it's like how you're defining success and failure, or why are you playing in the first place? And then that's where
Mm.
it's like it's about process and growth. Those are almost like three different. You could now
Okay.
saying own like it just as a way to like tease it out versus that's a lot in one before.
So
Because you did those are three kind of like they're always overlapping. That makes sense. They're all
where I
connected.
may have
So,
pieced together to kind of break it up to you, where I
yeah,
really pieced together who I want to be without putting together all the big moments. So the three big moments that I
yeah,
identified
yeah,
in my thing here
yeah,
was before the game was for me it's taking the big shots, so not
yeah,
hesitating.
yeah,
And then the last one is what you just identified is dealing with that adversity,
yeah.
right? As a
So
whole.
yeah, and that's
Those
that
are
own your capabilities will apply right into the big shots. So um
exactly.
and it's how do you deal with it with adversity, which is the why part. So okay, cool. Um and then so I wrote a lot down there. We would, I'll prime just a little bit for the sake of it. So, because you
Yeah.
kind of highlighted what you do want. I think with the before, you said we do want calm, relaxed, patient. So to be very clear on what you don't want, it was
Yeah.
fears, tension. Is that a
Yep.
word? Like what? And instead of that, like you're kind of like rushing before. Like, does that make sense? Like you're like chasing or rushing might be a good word.
Yeah.
Versus like patient. It's like, oh, I
I
can't
could
wait to the
totally
game.
go.
I can't wait. It's like, I can wait. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Like the game's at this time, I'll be there, and I'll
Yeah.
play when the game starts. Versus, and a classic example of a big mistake in a way is people on game day. They're like, game's at 4 o'clock, or if it's earlier, like, but they've been thinking about the game for like 6 straight hours before. They're
I've
mentally
done it.
burnt out by game time. Like it's like that person's so eager, right? Has so much chase and ambition and not enough patience. They're mentally burnt out by game time. So it's like, but being very clear is like I'm not going to be chase. I'm not going to overly chase and rush. It doesn't mean you have any eagerness. Still have the fire in you, but
Yeah,
you're going to complement that with some water and patience and perspective and relaxing. Um, the big shots, certainty, swagger, own, attack. Does that cover that side of it?
totally does. Totally
Other
does.
side then. What don't you want? So lack of trust, force, control, fear. What ones come to mind? Doubt, obviously.
So doubt to lack of trust is huge,
Yeah.
meaning I alluded to like hesitation,
Yeah.
big time,
Hesitation. Okay. That's a good word. Yeah.
big time. Um, you could say tense. So I think, but I think hesitation and tense are very related
Yeah.
because you almost hesitate because you're tense. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're probably trying to force it. You're trying to make sure you get a winner or not screw up. Like, so forcing a hesitation test, they're all over related, but
Yeah.
it's just clarifying the narrative for you and the feeling for you.
Yeah.
Um, And then instead of when adversity, process, growth focus, staying connected to your why, using it to learn and grow. Um, what don't you want to feel or operate when adversity strikes?
Result oriented.
Yeah.
That's the best way that I could summarize it is like
Yeah.
when adversity strikes, I feel like you got to make up points or you got to
Mhm.
get back in it. Like you're going to get crushed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. This could be a good one. Oh, you give the candle bonfire. You would have probably
Okay.
read it in the book from Brian Johnson, but it's like adversity happens. You're like, oh yeah, like you almost like not overly smile, but like you embrace it. Like that makes me stronger. Like that's what I'm here for.
Mhm.
Versus adversity happens, which is the gust of wind, and it hits a bonfire, it grows. But what you don't want is it hits a candle and makes it flicker and like, oh man, like get deflated. It's like, oh, I'm losing. Like, oh, I made him like what do you mean? Oh, like, yeah, like that's what I signed up for is to make mistakes. Like it's going to happen. Like if you don't want mistakes, don't play pro sports. Don't play sports at all. Like, so yeah, then you won't make any. Go live under a rock. Like, so, so,
I love
like,
that
but it's
frame.
right. So it's just like, that's my bond.
Yeah.
I like, yeah, like I live for like, this is what makes me grow. Like, and that's your why and all those things. So, okay. So we've got a nice, like 3-part, really good contrast. Then it's
Yeah.
bringing in the stories within it. So even just doing that, if we stop there, that's now your definition of success or who you want to be are those 3 things, these traits
Mm.
and not these. And like, and you can even go and measure them, right? And actually, we'll even do that first, just out of clarity. So
Okay.
before you read the book and any of the work, so this is kind of a good baseline. So before you were, and like you could probably even do before you started working on your mindset, but even just before this book, like if you rated yourself before games, was it like, and you don't have to do this, but I find it's a helpful like baseline for anybody,
Let's do it. Yeah.
starting the work is were you like 70% calm, relaxed, and patient and who you want to be before, and the 30% like a little bit of that chase, tension, fear? Or was it, there's no right or wrong number. And again, it's
Yeah.
relative to how
I
much mindset work you've done, but you don't have to share it here. But,
no, I totally will. I would
yeah,
say so we'll use the book as reference because I think the book is where it really
yeah, yeah,
kind of exponentially growed me over the
yeah,
past couple months.
yeah,
I would say I probably had close to like 60-40, meaning 60% calmness, 40%
yeah,
that chase mentality.
yeah. And then
That's
what do you would say
over.
now? What would you say now? You're up to like 80 or 90 or,
I
and
would
I
say
always say
90.
95% plus means you're doing your best. You're like, oh, I've really like dialed in consistently. Because some days it might be 95, next day it could be 70 or 90 or 80. So it's just to give us a rough number of like, even
Yeah.
just going through the work you've done, you've gone from 60 to what now? You said 80 or 85?
I'm gonna say between 80 and 85 is totally where I would put it. Yeah.
Yeah, cool, cool. So, and again, my goal for you is to get it to 95, which is not inherently easy, but definitely doable,
Yeah.
just to be clear.
Yeah.
So, and as maybe we tighten up the alter ego, it might help it get there and you apply some things, but that's awesome growth. What, the big shots, what were you previously? How much was it swagger, attack, own versus hesitant, tense, force?
Big shots, I'd say less. I would put it at like 50-50 if I'm being honest with
50-50.
you.
And what's it at
Yeah.
now, roughly?
70-75. I would even say if you looked at just the past 2 months, it may be higher.
Yeah.
Like, I kinda
Or maybe even 80?
I don't yeah, I don't hesitate much anymore not only because the alter ego, but I think the other mindset that I've grown just as a player is
Yeah.
knowing when I need to take certain shots, which allows you to say, you know what, I took the right shot regardless of execution.
Yeah. We're gonna come back to that word need, but
Okay.
wrote that down.
Remember reading that in the book.
So
Might have misspoke.
and I'll frame this for the audience too, and for
Yeah.
you. The words aren't everything, so that's why we'll come back to it. But it's like the word need isn't inherently a bad word, but that need could leave because like, oh, what I need to take the shot. Well, need leads to what? Have to, should, need,
Mm,
judgment, tension, control, hesitation. That makes sense.
it
So
does.
so it's just like, hey, I've learned to trust my instincts and do what I feel is best, not what I think or need to do is right. Like
Mm,
that contrast, which I think is huge when we talk about like decision making. Are you going analytical, control, right, wrong? This is not a math test when you're out there, like where you can double check your answers and go right or wrong. It's which one do you feel is best based on all your training and your instincts and in the moment. And are you trusting your instincts to do what you feel is best and your swagger, like see that contrast. So that's why
yeah.
actually we're going to go to the need thing. We went to it already. So, so, so again, it's not a wrong word because it's like, oh no, I'm doing what I think I need to do. And that like, I'm really getting better at trusting my instincts. So maybe your interpretation was on par with what we want. The
Mm,
language though, be careful of because that language can cause the should have
domino.
to, the domino effect to some tension and hesitation. So,
Totally.
um, and so it's interpretation more important than the actual words. But okay, cool. 50 to say 80, let's say roughly. And that's, it's all relative. The number actually is almost irrelevant, but it gives it some tangibility. That makes sense. And
Yeah.
because the goal is just to do your best to fully be in the water and just playing your game and being in the moment, in the game. So, and you're the sounds of it, a lot closer to that. Third one, then adversity. What was the baseline? The bonfire, stay connected to your why, the process growth versus when adversity happens, like candle, dwindled results, a little bit fear, focus too much on the
Mm.
result itself.
If I was reflecting on the past year, it'd be a completely different answer. But past couple of months, I would totally say somewhere in the 65, 70 range as a
Mm-hmm.
baseline.
Yeah.
And adversity now close to 90.
Yeah.
I would say around the 90 mark, definitely.
Awesome. Nice. And like maybe before the fail first project, it was a 10. So
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
just a funny joke. But anyways,
Exactly.
well,
That's completely what I was getting at.
yeah,
Completely what I
yeah.
was
You're
getting
like, so I'm like, trust me,
at.
we've all been there. Lots of people get there. So in different
Yeah.
ways. And it's all relative because what's a 80 to you relative to 80 to somebody else could be very different. So it's
Yeah,
so
completely different.
subjective. But it gives us a baseline and something to tangibly work on. Hey, this is what the alter ego's for, the reset routine's for, these discussions are for, is to get these numbers up. And then as these numbers go from 60s and 70s to now 80s and 90s, like you're going to be more consistent. Like that's
Mm.
the bottom line. You're going to enjoy it more. Like all these things. Like so,
You
and they
really
all work
you really
together.
try
There's no
to
way you can have one of them
quantify.
be super high and one super low. This just never really works that way. So, yeah, go ahead. What were you going to say?
It seems like you're really trying to just quantify it at some extent so that you can be aware of the growth that you're making.
100%. Yeah.
Really, really,
Yeah.
right?
Especially when somebody's like going early on, we'll quantify, but then eventually, like I have some athletes that keep quantifying it and they'll go into it
Yeah.
and we'll do it. And some are like, I don't like numbers. I'm like, okay, cool. As long as you feel you're doing your best, I think that's what matters. So like I'm a kind of a
No
numbers
numbers
guy
for
or,
you.
have a
Yeah.
tendency. So, okay. So now the next step is the story, which really evokes the feeling and personalizes it even more. So we can we want to look at both sides, but when you're thinking, who or what inspires you has
Mm,
these types of traits, what comes to mind? I think you've already got one, but
I do, and I will tell you that definitely went on a journey to try and figure this out.
yeah.
So I watched a lot of Marvel movies. I researched a lot of superheroes.
Yeah.
And originally I went on the journey of who was Venom,
Yeah.
which is kind of like internal alter ego of Spider-Man,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And the reason I went that route is because I felt like that attack mentality and that a little bit of calmness of who is Eddie Brock sat with
Mhm.
me a little
Yeah.
bit. But what I felt was missing was that why they were doing it and for
Mhm.
the why of how Venom operated, right?
Yeah.
So where I shifted to was I went from watching Marvel to I watched some other movies, which I got into the Transformer series. And on the Transformer series, I originally stumbled into Bumblebee, and then I realized, you know what, Bumblebee is not as although the purpose is there, he's not as attack minded as I would like to be, right? Who I think is my true
Mhm.
self.
Yeah.
So what I ended up getting to was Optimus Prime being like the perfect fit. And
Mhm.
I can tell you exactly why. So Optimus Prime as a whole, if you watch any of the movies, you kind of already know this if you watch one Transformer movie. He
Mhm.
operates from a place of courage and bravery and doesn't even know what fear is, right? Doesn't
Mhm.
even think about it because his larger purpose is to protect Earth and the humans on the planet as a whole, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
he literally, fear out the back of his mind. It doesn't matter if he's outnumbered, it doesn't matter if he's outskilled. He is
Mhm.
going in and doing his job because his purpose is much greater than who he is. So
Mhm.
that was really number one on the whole list of things.
Mhm.
Two, under high pressure situations, he is the leader, right? He's the one who's calm, cool, collected, and also ready to fight at any point in time, right?
Mhm.
So not only is he calm, cool, and collected and operating from a bigger purpose, the third part is that he is the first person to lean into battle and to attack. And
Mhm.
the reason being is because from a leadership standpoint as a whole,
Mhm.
right? He has to set the example. He
Yeah.
has the one being the narrative, and he knows that if he's not the one to attack first, he's going to be attacked on the other side.
Yeah.
So that whole encompassing about like who Optimus Prime is as a character just
Mhm.
resonated for me heavily, and that's the key word here that I wanted to kind of emphasize is like I try to relate emotionally to all of these characters, and the one that hit home with me after using a bunch in the gym, using a
Mhm.
bunch on the court was Optimus Prime. And that's where in your book you were like, you know when it clicks because it resonates with you, right?
Yeah.
You're out
Yeah.
in the court and you're like, this character resonates with me heavily.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a summary on how I got to Optimus Prime as a whole.
Love it. And you've already got it's woven in the story pretty darn good to the traits that you want. So,
Oh
and
yeah.
I'll give two kind of like high level thoughts for the listeners
Yeah.
in a way, which is one, doesn't have to be a superhero. Superheroes are great. Just as a good reminder for people. Like you can use animals, you can use people you know, relatives that inspire you. You can use a
Who was the
nickname.
DMV driver you talked about? Tell
Yeah,
me
there's a
about that
DMV.
one.
So
Because
the DMV
that's different.
driver, yeah,
Yeah.
the DMV was and he still uses it. And but it was
It's
like
amazing.
he was like the DMV ladies, a baseball pitcher, and he didn't want he's just like whether he gets a strike or a hit or or a strikeout or a hit or a ball or like whatever it is, he was like next. Just next. So it's just like the DMV lady there, just being like, "Who's in? Okay, whatever. Deal with it. Next." Like that person's upset, not upset. Is like, like just unfazed. Like
Yeah.
next. There's just next mentality. So um he channels a little bit of that into his alter ego. It's also evolved. So that's not his name per se, but it's like H bomb, like the DMV lady or whatever. So
Yeah.
pulls in some of those traits. Um but so anyway, so you can pull in like any kind of like
Yeah.
interesting, just like movie characters, etc., like that inspire you. And again, you don't have to have a super cool name, but it can be helpful. But it's about being intentional, and you can play with it. And some people are, sounds like nothing came quick to you. Um, the but you like went in and play with it, and like the more you do that, the more you're going to find something more meaningful. Like it should be
Totally.
meaningful too. But sometimes you can find something pretty meaningful pretty quick. You can have a version one like you did Venom, and then you evolved it into something that even had more meaning. So that's
There
important
was a
as
couple
well.
versions.
Yeah, you
There
got
was a couple more versions.
yeah,
I'll
yeah.
another one that I'll give you was not a superhero.
Yeah.
Have you watched the show Peaky Blinders?
Yeah, yeah, I know Peaky Blinders. I've had a few people lean on Peaky Blinders, yeah. Was it
Okay,
the
so
yeah,
Thomas Shelby, yeah, and I
yeah,
think a lot
yeah,
of people can relate to that.
yeah,
Just because also with that calm, cool, collected swagger, I think
yeah,
where I didn't relate as much, and this is where you have to like totally. I keep harping on the resonation part because like it
yeah,
has to resonate with you.
yeah,
Is I think when I tried to employ him from like an attack mentality standpoint,
yeah,
it was very challenging to relate to that like heat of battle thing.
yeah,
And on his thing, he's also at points overly emotional, which
yeah,
I wanted to separate from, right? I
yeah,
wanted to separate from the overly emotional part because I'm aligning that with my worst self,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So with that being said, it just didn't resonate with me like I wanted it to. So that's where I did iterate. I probably went through like 4 or 5 different characters. I tried Iron Man.
yeah, that's
I
hilarious.
tried Spider-Man originally, Venom. Yeah,
Yeah,
I did a whole slew of attempts,
yeah,
but you got to be creative. You got to play with it, right? Until something
yeah.
hits.
No, that's awesome. And I'll give another
Yeah.
funny tidbit that might not be true, but
Okay.
my understanding I've had a few people use Venom before, and
Yeah.
my limited but possibly false information is I think part of Venom's why is to save his planet or something. I don't know if that's true or not, but
Mm, you're
I think
right.
it's
That's at the beginning, and he changes his mindset at the end.
yeah, so yeah,
So
I'm not sure. I'm not. I remember one of my athletes being like, "Yeah, and his why is protect his." I was like, "Oh, sick!" Like, and then when you were like, "His why," was I was like, "Well, I thought it was." It was like not that it matters, but
so
it's
his
funny you picked it anyway. So, but I
yeah.
really
So
like
if
Optimus Prime for you. So, um, now
yeah
let's do this. So
yeah.
there's two or three things to then take out of this. One is um, you can alter the name Optimus Prime with keeping it as the main theme. So, as an example, his last name's Martone, right? Do you have like a nickname like Marty or like
You want to know what I did?
what?
You want me to expose it for you already? What I came up I just did Optimus F1P, which was like fail first
Oh,
project.
yeah,
Or you could also counter with fail first podcast or even fail first prime. And I
yeah,
kind of felt like they all worked.
yeah, yeah,
So that's really what I went with because they're really
yeah.
interchangeable.
There you go.
But
You
I
already
want you
got
to
it.
kind of run into how we can walk through anyways if somebody didn't already have that like thought process of like how can I come about a name?
Yeah, so the naming part then is just it's just about like and one thing I would encourage is like you want it to like it should click to the ear is actually
Mm,
a fairly important thing. Um so like often like we'll try and do like alliteration. So like and so like I like fail first prime or so Optimus F1P like it's like OF1P. Like it's like, there's it's not bad alliteration, like you know what I mean? And like
yeah.
um and obviously you've got a really personalized thing in the failed first project or podcast or so it's just tying that in there. So, Optimus failed first, F1P. So yeah, that
So
has good
what
enough alliteration from my end. But and then it's just like, oh, the sound of it should click, and it really pulls it together. Versus like Optimus Prime clicks, but it's like I'm gonna make it part of me. That makes sense. My
mm,
version of Optimus Prime is Optimus F1P. So, and then the other cool thing is you can have a tagline within it too sometimes. So I'm not sure you have one of those yet.
oh
But no,
I
that's
do.
great. You got one?
Oh, we got a tagline.
Oh, give me the
Thi-
tagline
thi-
now.
this comes from so once again, it came from the movie and just resonated with me.
Yeah.
And it literally is just I'll take you all on. Period.
Oh, yeah,
The
nice.
reason being is because regardless of any situation that Optimus Prime was in, multiple times throughout the movie series, and when I
Yeah.
say movie series, I watched all 5 of them. This is not a joke. Um,
You took your homework
he
seriously.
yeah, wait, yeah. Listen, I wanted it to be really game changing for me on the court, and this is why when I speak about it, like I'm telling you that it
Mhm,
changes the way that you perform.
mhm,
So the reason that resonated with me is one, I went and I tried it, and I was like, this is awesome.
mhm.
And the other half of it is like if your back's against the wall or if you are ahead on the aggressive side, you can always employ it to be like, I don't care if I'm outnumbered, I don't care if I'm outskilled, I'm going to take
Yeah.
you all on anyways. So
Yeah.
that's what I ended up writing down and resonating with me
I love
for
that.
sure.
And like you can also use that line as like they call it like a ground punch. Todd calls it.
Okay.
I don't think you know it's in the book, but it's like when Hulk's losing. The concept of a
Mm.
ground punch is like Hulk's losing to the bad guy, and it's like you think he's about to lose, and then what does he do? Like smashes the ground, like Hulk smash, and like makes a huge comeback.
Mm.
So if you feel like not just losing the match, but losing mentally, like you're slipping out of ops, just like, nah, I'll take you all on. Like I'll go down to the bitter end. Like let's go.
Yeah.
So it's like a rallying cry. It's like not a lot of the younger people haven't seen this, but was it um, Lord of the Rings? You shall
Mm.
not pass. Like it's like that moment where you're just like, no, you just double down, assert yourself. It's so Todd calls that a ground punch. Really cool, narrative that you can tap
It's
into.
heavily it's heavily connected for me in those we talked about key moments being a key moment of adversity.
Yeah.
It more than anything, it has resonated for me in those moments. So you talk about like leaning in and like accepting
Mhm.
the learning process.
Yeah.
That me using that in that key moment of adversity has been huge for
Yeah.
me to really bounce back quickly and rather than dwell on it at all. It's like, you know
Mhm.
what? You're
Yeah.
coming at me, I'll take you all on right here. You
Yeah.
know?
I love it. And then have you created a name or narrative around the what you don't want and the
Yeah, I
antithesis? Yeah,
did.
and I want
I
to hear
thought
this.
about this a little bit,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you how I went about it. So, beyond like Optimus Prime obviously being a massive sized alien robot, right? He does hide in society as a car, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so the whole element of hiding is kind of where I went about with this because that is where like when I'm overexcited, I often end up getting to the point of when I'm too excited, you're kind of shutting down a little bit. You're shying away, you're leaning out of the moment, right? You're playing
Mhm.
too safe.
Mhm.
So I ended up going the route I originally was going to go with a Toyota Prius, but then I was like, you know what? I don't want to do that. So I ended up
My sister
going
drives a
with a
Prius,
Mac.
we always rip on her.
Exactly. Exactly. I didn't want anybody that drives a Prius to come back at me and start pointing fingers. So I went,
Good car. It's a good car. It's a good car.
yeah. So I went with a Matchbox car. I went with
Okay.
a Matchbox car and then just shortened it to Matchbox. Period.
Yeah. Yeah.
So on
Yeah.
one end I have on one end I have Matchbox and the other end I have Optimus.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like a toy car, kind of like, ugh, like it's like, and it's like, no,
Small.
yeah, small,
Yeah.
like it's not. So, no, I like that. And you could just think of like Optimus Prime, like if you really, it's like just crushing the car, like it's just
I like
crushing
that.
the Matchbox car. Like that's, that
Yeah.
imagery can be helpful. The
I like that.
other big thing to tie in, um, is in your reset routine,
Yeah.
the one of the and I like the bell, and so you're doing it at the before and end of games, correct?
Yeah.
Obviously, you
Or
wouldn't do that,
workout.
yeah, and workouts, but you do it before games when you're playing, and at the end,
Yeah.
the bell thing.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
but you can't obviously really use that during, correct? I assume
No.
not.
So I do a
It's
little
not
other
weird.
small. Yeah,
You
just like start playing a bell or like shake it.
you could like I don't know, like on the beside the court, you could bring like this little like square thing, like ding. It's like 1 second, please, ding. It's like, hey, if it works, do it. Like who cares? Like so, but
Everybody
anyway,
be like, what the fuck is going on?
you'd be just
No, but
messing with the opponents. It's
yeah.
just an intimidation tactic.
Oh my
Um,
god.
so, but what I wanted, I don't know if you've done it, but it's the totem, it's the clothe cognition, it's the so at the end of your reset routine and you commit, you're going, it's like it's Optimus Prime time and lean in and attack, and I'll bring you all on, or whatever that trait at that time you want to lean into, like
Yeah.
patience. Like Optimus Prime is also doesn't rush in; he's patient. You know what I mean? Like,
So
um,
patient.
and so when you do that reset routine, one of the last things is like it's the activation. And so um and it's almost like it could be like your racket is like Optimus Prime's sword, right? I think he has a sword kind of in his part of
Mm,
his, yeah, right.
you
So
know
it's like
what?
your racket is
That's
his
not a bad
sword,
idea.
and it's like you
Yeah.
grab the sword. And so at the start of your reset routine, you might even put your sword down, or you put it in the other hand and then you bring it back and it's like it's locked in. Um, but you could do like the other funny thing you could do, or like the bell is like when the bell happens, you're coming like it's like you don't have to do this, but you could if you wanted to. But you do like a little like roll the shoulder back, and it's like Optimus Prime is being activated, and it's like transforming literally. And then when you hit the bell, it's like, all right, I can rest Optimus Prime now. That makes sense.
I
And then the
yeah.
during, like you could even do this like, all right, I need a little reset, and it's just like get my kinks out, and it's like you do the robot, like, or I don't know if you want to do that, but you could, and it's just like, like you could do something creative that you're very clear and aware, like it's go time and it's Optimus Prime time. So that's and that's the power of like Clothe Cognition or Totem that really personalizes the alter ego, the reset
Yeah.
routine, and it's like, all right, like it pulls the story back out. So, yeah, do you have anything like that, or do you like out of that in terms of like, there's the ones before and at the end with the bell, I kind of like, but anything like during, do you like the, you don't have to do the robot dance, but you know, anything, or you could use the racket as the sword kind of idea. What comes to mind?
So I actually like the racket as the sword a lot.
Yeah, yeah,
I will tell you what I've been exploring recently, but I really want to explore the racket as a sword thing.
yeah,
So I've been doing my sneakers, and the relationship that I've given is that Optimus Prime also transforms his wheels, right?
yeah,
Because he goes from a car to a robot. So I made the
yeah,
relationship of me also transforming my tires or my wheels as well.
yeah.
I
I like that.
kind of
Do
like the
both.
racket of this. Yeah,
I would do
do
both.
both.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, the more you have, the
perfect.
better. The stronger the narrative. Does that make sense? So it's
Okay,
like, hey,
yeah.
I've got the wheels, I've got the sword. You've got. Do you wear a headband or a hat?
So I do wear a hat. So a hat is part of it. So that I wear like this. I wear a fail first hat. Now I'm making one specifically that
Yeah,
is only going to be for pickleball, and it's going to be red.
yeah. And I would write
So
Optimus F1P on it.
somewhere on it. I love that.
I would
I
make it.
love that.
You should make a. You could like I don't know if you want to or not. Not, but you can make a secondary brand. Like you know what I mean? Like it's like you brand, literally
Yeah,
just make a new logo that says like, oh, you know, Optimus F1P. Like just start selling that shit. But there's some extra income for him. But the
I love.
but you know what I mean? Like or you make a personal
Yeah,
like you don't have to, or just you wear the red one. It's the red one. It's like Optimus Prime. It's like so. Then part of at the end of the reset routine is like you might want to take the hat off. You clean the shoes to like make sure the shoes are still good, and you grab and then so like the last thing you do is like shoes locked, sword in, hat's good. Like I'm go. Like, do you know what I mean? Like I've
yeah.
got it all. I've got the attack, I've got the mind, I've got the feet ready to move. Like you're locked. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
you flip the switch, you're dialed. Like so, and it's the story
Huh,
and the imagination that makes it so powerful, right? Does that make sense? And you've already done a lot of the
totally.
pre-work, but I think having more than just the shoes, especially because it's a transformer and there's all these pieces to it. Like, and again, I would
Yeah.
use the bell though. I think the bell's genius, and if it's already working, it's great. I would just that's the bell's like that's transformation mode. Like it's like once you hit the bell, like I would almost don't grab your racket till you hit the bell. Don't put your hat on until you hit the bell. And then once you hit the
Me.
bell at the end, don't touch your racket anymore. Don't touch the hat anymore. Like
Huh.
that's when you take it off. Like you're just really, um, being, I don't know, professional or personalized or just being very intentional about it's go time. Now I'm done. Does that make sense? Like it's go
Yeah.
time, and then throughout you're like, oh, like make sure it's like I'm locked in. I got all my pieces, all my traits, all my superpowers, all the parts of Optimus Prime are going in case like oh I got hurt, like, oh, got back going, like you know what I mean, like it'll
Yeah.
reset. So, but I love the once you hit that bell, I'd be like shoes, sword, hat, like helmet, like lock, lock, lock. So
Almost bring one of those desk bells with me. You know what
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
talking about?
Oh yeah, yeah. Desk bell. Yeah, you should
Ding,
get one. And then every time you go do it, it's like a really little lock. Just on the,
ding it right before I go.
yeah,
You
exactly. Yeah,
I love it because it just so the reason I love this so much is because of the uniqueness it is to you and you alone,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And there's something so powerful in that, not only from like it being unique to you, but you being the one creating it,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um, an addition to this, kind of a slight pivot, but something that I do unintentionally, and I kind of accept it as like a midpoint reset, because I don't think I'm going to be able to ding the bell in between points. Now,
No,
I would
no.
try. The other player may call it hindrance, but I could try dinging the bell. Like just put it on the sidelines to just go and ding it.
Yeah.
But I've done this weird thing, and I think a lot of players do it maybe on accident, but I kind of like wipe my face as like
Yeah.
a reset.
Yeah.
And how I've tried to just lean into it rather than trying to change it
Yeah.
is you talked about like building up your shoulders, like transforming for Optimus Prime.
Yeah.
I've just kind of used it to roll my shoulders back and kind of reset myself into that transformer like figure. Am I doing the right thing by just leaning into something that I'm already doing?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. As long
Yeah.
as it connects and makes sense in your head and you like it and you find it helpful, I don't give a shit what you do as long as it works. Like, you know what I mean? So um yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, and again, I would have two versions. I would have one with the bell
Okay.
at the beginning and the end, and then you have one for throughout the match.
In
If that makes
between.
sense.
Yeah.
So in
Yeah.
between. And again, it's like, but I would, for the most part, those, things that you're doing, and again, you can wipe the shoes quickly, grab, like, do a little two hands with the sword or one hand, or you do something where you spin it and grab it again, or like, it's just something at the end, you got to play with it. Or it's a little wipe, and that's like, yeah. And it's like wipe, take your hat off, and then reset. Like, I know, Nadal is pretty notorious, and he has an alter ego, I'm pretty sure, as well, but whatever his like branding thing is, like the bowl or whatever, but
Yeah.
I don't know it that well. But the point, and I think he might have done that with Todd too, but I'm not certain on that, so don't quote me. But even though it's posted online, but anyway, I think so. Let's give Todd credit if it's not true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. As long
so
as you give him credit, you have your bases covered.
yeah. So even if it's not true, I'll give him credit.
Yeah.
But I think like he's written like just fidgeting before points, like almost like obsessively. But it's
Yeah.
like it's just giving him something to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
routine that he does, and it's just like, yeah, like it's like the bull, like, just like it's staying in motion. Or so you can you don't want to be too neurotic per se, and you don't want to be overly superstitious, because that's, going to backfire, generally speaking.
Yeah.
But you can have routines, and routines are very and then again, it's the pace of those routines and sticking with it, and if you're playful and intentional, it makes a very powerful routine. So no, I love
I
it, man.
think something that
That's dope.
talking about like the tense part. So building on this, and the reason I want to emphasize this is because you kind of led me into it here, is that there's different points throughout the match where I feel like I do need different things that reset me.
Mm-hmm,
And I
mm-hmm,
feel like always wiping away, usually like the wiping away is like I'm walking back to the baseline and I just had a little bit of adversity and now I need to reset myself, build myself back up to
mm-hmm.
then go take on the next point, right?
Yeah.
However, if that hasn't occurred, and let's say it's the first point, or let's say it's like me waiting to get a ball, I'm the one getting iced out in the game. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
trying to like reset from something, from a miss that I just had, but I'm trying to keep myself engaged and ready.
Yeah.
I notice that I spin my paddle, and I'll notice that on lazy days where I'm checked out, I won't spin my paddle before
Yeah.
points. I'll
Yeah.
just kind of be holding it in my hand, and then the tension builds up in
Yeah.
your hand,
Yeah.
rather than when I'm spinning my paddle, I'm consistently not only engaged and present,
Love that.
but I'm kind of almost keeping my grip a little bit loose by not getting too tense on it. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Oh, 100%. And again, that's
Yeah.
why it's like the wipe is like keeping your mind right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The
Yep.
spin is keeping your sword ready. That makes sense.
Mm,
Not when the sword
it
getting
does. I
lazy.
like that.
Like I'm getting ready to attack. Like you're trying to ice me, you can't. Like I'm
Yeah.
staying hot. Like, you know what I mean. Like I'll be ready for you. Like so, um, and then and you can even have like the feet. Like and the feet's like the before. It's like, yeah, wheels are in. Like
Yeah.
calm, but wheels are like, whatever. So you can have some different. That's what's nice about having those different things. I had a fun narrative too. Was I had like a pro guy, basketball, top league in Spain, and he was like, when I played his best, he was like from like the ghetto pretty much, where he came from, very
Yeah.
like fear mindset to get out, and he did. Now he's making a good living. Is the top league, pretty much below the NBA, and he was we're talking about like, why is he playing in the first place? He's like, oh, just like when we would bike to the gym, and then like, and he would always tuck his jersey in, and he just did some certain things and or tuck it in certain, like, I was like, he's just started doing all those now at the pro level. I was like, go ride the bike before and imagine you're biking to the gym. I was like, and I was like, go like, and so he brought that into his routine, and that was, and then his nickname when he was young, like that was his alter ego, was his nickname when he was
Yeah.
like first, when he was just a baller, like, and he rode the bike, it became part of his game day routine now. Just like he rode the bike 2 games when he was in high school, and he tucked his jersey in the same way, he wipes his shoes more like he used to do back then. Like he just started doing all the same habits as when he was just, so it is this, we're being, again, that's like Black Mamba, be more intentional about it versus before it might just happening. Then you face adversity, new pressures, adversity, you kind of like get into your head, you get small. So 100%, like, you don't want to overcomplicate stuff, but like that doesn't sound overcomplicated. Like, oh,
Yeah.
have 2, 3 different, different types of routines based on different moments. Oh, sounds smart to me. So that like, so,
And it sounds like it kind of, you emphasize this in your book too.
yeah.
And you have a whole section on it, which is just like letting it come to you more than like
Mm-hmm.
going and trying to seek it out too aggressively, and ultimately you're searching forever too hard and just not letting it come to you. And
Yeah.
I do think that if you, at least with me too, by having the awareness of this, it
Yeah.
does come to you. Like when you're building your alter ego, like I didn't originally know that I was spinning my paddle. I was about to call it the sword, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. You should
spinning the
call it the sword.
paddle,
You should call it the sword.
okay, for
Yeah.
to increase the narrative, right? Really of the story as a whole,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So let's reference it as a sword so everybody knows it is my paddle. But I didn't know I was spinning the sword at the time
Yeah.
until I was developing this alter ego. And
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I actually do this when I'm engaged, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing it when I'm kind of checked out or not
Yeah.
present or not engaged.
Yeah.
There's a couple other things that I noticed too. If you want to talk about like being present or not, that I
Mm-hmm.
noticed, but you pick up on those things in the process of building this. It's not going to come to you all at once. I can
Yeah.
promise you that,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's an important piece to emphasize. If like this totally, as much of like it is a journey to pursue pickleball at a professional level, it's a journey developing your alter ego. It's not like a, hey, now I have an alter ego, one stop, everything's there, deploy it, elite level of talent and elite level of play all the time. It's like, no, it totally morphs and builds over time.
Mm-hmm.
Leading into a secondary question, have alter egos even like, do they usually adapt, or have you seen people kind of change alter egos with seasons? Is that another piece of this?
Yeah, like I think, well, it depends exactly what you mean, but like you're gonna have different alter egos for different areas of your life,
Mm,
easily, and different phases in life, for sure. Um, and I can definitely, like, we've done it, like even some athletes, some of the like the as they're rising the ranks, it's like, hey, what worked at this level, and then they get to a new level, and there's just new things, and they're young and evolving. Then it's like they might want to evolve it, and also
mm,
like sometimes, like just like you had, like version one just didn't click as much, and then you
mm,
also like in due time can evolve the traits a little bit too. So meaning, um,
mm.
what do you want to feel in those big shots, and then all of a sudden, maybe it's like you find something that just resonates a little more, makes it even more clear on who you want to be. Like we're always clarifying, sharpening that to a degree. There also could be like, oh, like, you know, at some point it's like, hey, there's a fourth and a fifth one that might be added, or something you're overlooking, or like, serves, or that it's like, hey, you want to evolve it in that. That makes sense. Like you're adding a new weapon
Yeah.
to a degree. Like we don't want to, again, overcomplicate it, but it's like, you know what? These things are running, but shit, like that, like this is a little, so we will get more nuance in it. But again, or you can park stuff that's working well. And you're like, you know what? This is still important, but like my priorities are now these 3 traits or whatever. You know what I mean?
Mm,
It's
I do.
it's like the big shots you just get. You've been doing it for 6 months. You're like, I don't think twice about big shots. So it's still really important, but like I'd rather focus on like these types of shots to make like the narrative around that, and like you evolve it. So, um, but yeah, you could elaborate if I didn't answer your question, but I think,
No,
for
you did.
sure was the answer.
You
Yeah.
did. You
Yeah.
did. And I kind of wanted to. Is there any last couple steps to kind of building the alter ego if somebody wanted to go and deploy it today? You know, they just watched this or just listened to it, and now they have an idea of like, okay, I want to go implement this. What are really the last couple steps? Are we there, or
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot. It's the process of kind of blank piece of paper and what are the moments of impact? What are the key
yeah,
areas? Who do you want to be? Who do you not? What are the traits? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And do both sides. And you know, what are the thoughts, the feelings, the actions? Like the more you can describe it and you do the work and get clear, and then it's like, all right, well, what stories and narratives will help bring this to life, and can I create a name and an identity around it? And it's and how can that be personalized and personal to you? So it's like, yeah, it's very like, yeah, this clicks is very meaningful, like versus just, oh, it's cool. Like, yeah, it's cool, or is it meaningful? Like, you know what I mean, like yours is meaningful. Like, so, and you also help tie it to be more meaningful with the like adding in the fail first project right within it. Like, I mean, like right into the name. So um it's like you're literally out there fighting for the failed first project and like leading the project, and so to speak. So that's powerful, like through and through. So
I couldn't
the other
agree more.
side, I'll say often what can also happen on the other side of the evolving is
Mm,
it just becomes so much a part of you, like you're not even have to think much about it. So it just becomes just how you operate. Just it just be
yeah.
like it just becomes so second nature because you've been so intentional with it for a period of time. This is just who I am, how I play now. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm,
Like, so like I did, and you can do this in all areas. I'll give a couple the quick ones. Like one of my favorite ones when I first used this on myself was in my business. So there's the coaching, but I also have like a whole business coaching. Like there's a bunch of coaches, and we got to make. Doesn't matter if I'm a good coach, if nobody like knows about it. So I had to like make strategic decisions, and
mm,
I had a tendency, keyword tendency, to say yes to everything, and like it's just like I was just wanted to chase down every shiny object and do every project and every idea, and which is not a good business strategy. Does that make sense? Like you get nothing done. You're not doing the most important things. So as a business owner, I wanted to be more strategic and say no. So I leaned on Mark Cuban because he's seems like a pretty successful business guy, and I liked his sport background. I was like, okay, I want to be like the Cuban CEO, like or the confident Cuban. And I have a hat, and I keep it actually beside my desk. But I used to put this hat on, and I put a hat on. Well, I wanted to like plan and make decisions and be strategic. That was
love that.
like, I don't know, 3 or 4. Like I don't ever wear the hat. I don't need to.
Yeah.
I think I'm good at now saying no. I still have a tendency. I can sometimes say yes too much. And um, but I've like that's just who I am. Like I'm just that, in which I was intentionally. And I had that capability in me before, but I need to like be more intentional about it. Cause
Mm,
um so anyways, that's an example, let alone like you can do it like
that's a great point.
for the parents, if there's parents listening, like with kids and being calm and patient with them. And there's some, you can lean on those narratives and different things that sometimes can be helpful. But um, yeah, no, I'll leave it at that. But yeah, no, I think we've covered it pretty in depth. Often just seeing somebody else go through it is great, but it's now you got to
Totally.
park your butt and sit down and put in the work, not just, yeah, it's a great idea. I thought about it a little bit and gave it a quick 10 minutes thoughts like, oh, well, like, yeah, you
You
get
do.
out of there what you do it. So,
You truly have to commit to it, and I think going into it, I not only wanted to do it, right, for my own personal success on the
yeah.
court, but I wanted to do it because I think there's something so great about developing something on your own, and I think a lot of us entrepreneurs really understand that and, like, even understand the fulfillment from that, and I shouldn't even say just entrepreneurs. I think everybody understands it, like, when you build something yourself, and
Hmm.
for those of you who have kids, you probably resonate with it heavily. It's like you get a lot of fulfillment over the development of building something of your own. So
Hmm.
with the alter ego practice, it's the same thing as like you're building this yourself and you're only going to get as much output as you put in, right? So
Hmm.
if I put in a bunch of work into building my alter ego, I'm going to get a lot out of it, right?
Yeah.
But if I
Yeah.
don't put a lot of work in, it's not a magic pill. right?
Yeah.
It totally helps, but it's
Yeah.
not a magic pill where it's just like, okay, I'm gonna give you this and you're gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like you still got to put the work in. You got to put the work in. You got to build the narrative. You got to build the story, and that's what hits you emotionally. Like when you
Yeah.
feel it emotionally, that's when I knew it clicked. Right
Yeah.
when that emotional attachment got involved, that's when I knew it clicked.
Yeah.
The emphasis on this of like why I started personally employing it to reiterate, because I think people are like, okay, right, alter ego is awesome, it's gonna help my game, but like why? Like why the fuck am I doing this in the first place? Like
Yeah.
why am I gonna go spend my time building an alter ego?
Yeah.
I'll kind of resonate first off, and then I'll let you get into like really the important parts of like what it does for you.
Mhm.
Um, why I employed it was from a confidence standpoint, right? Was from the
Yeah.
fact that I knew I was leaning too much into what would be my worst self, meaning the fears, right? The overexcitement, the shying away, those pieces I was leaning almost too much into and not getting enough out of. So obviously,
Mhm.
naturally, if that's hindering your performance or the way that you want to perform and know that you can perform, getting to back to like who your true self is, like you talked about, I was looking for strategies to employ to aid in that, to pull my
Mhm.
true self out more consistently.
Yeah.
So from a confidence standpoint, that's where I employed this. And the amount of
Yeah.
times that I now step on the court calm, cool, collected, with my
Yeah.
high level of purpose, ready to attack, is he gave like our numbers we use are roughly 80%. I've had long streaks of consistent play now. I used to have huge gaps of playing really good one day and not playing great the other. And now my
Yeah.
consistency has just been there really day in and day out. And not that you don't have low days, but I'll go multiple weeks to
Mhm.
multiple months of playing high level and then having a low day. Where before it
Yeah.
was like day here, day there, high day, low day, high day, low day, high day, low day. So
Yeah.
I at least want to speak on that from like why you would employ an alter ego in the first place. And for me,
Yeah.
it was from a confidence standpoint. And I think a lot of other athletes can relate to that, whether it is confidence, whether it is performance anxiety, whether it
Yeah.
is overthinking, that is the thing that you're dealing with. If it's any of those things, it's totally a practice that can help you pull your true self out. Totally.
Yeah.
Does that make
No, I love
sense?
that.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And you're, you know, still early-ish days in it, and hopefully today get a
Very
little
early.
more refinement.
Very early.
And I
Yeah.
would and two other kind of like strategies within that are
Mm,
reflecting after. So I don't know if you're already
okay.
writing the numbers down, but a good strategy I would
I'm
do is
not.
like, so if you're on
Okay.
personal scorecard and you reflect, hey, how'd today go? What did I do well? How did I show up as my alter ego? What are my numbers on those three traits? And when you do that, what does that do? Increase self awareness, make you more aware, makes it easier to choose, to learn, to grow, and move forward. And
Mm,
it also holds you accountable. Damn it, another 80. I want you to start getting mad at 80 days because once we get you into consistent 90s, let alone 95s, or hey, I'm at my best most days. Well, now what? Your dips are 80s
mm.
versus if you stay at 80s, your dips are going to be 60s and 70s. Does that make sense? So it's like
That's it.
we set the standard for so the scorecard, the reflection process is it just makes sense. Like it's what do you do after practice and games? Like reflect, learn, and grow. Like become more aware so that you can do what? Self-correct better the next day, be more intentional. So adding that practice with how much imagery do you do? Like I know you talked a little bit about imagery in the reset, but like a 5-10 minute like imagery script, intentional. Are you doing much of that yet? Or
I, I do. So I do a
a little bit?
lot. I do a
Yeah,
lot of mental rehearsal. So if there's
yeah,
anything that before I started diving into like a lot of practices that you've given me, even with the book
yeah,
and beyond and online that
yeah,
I've watched of you,
yeah,
the biggest thing that I started was mental rehearsals
yeah. So
in
which is
general.
great.
Image.
Now
Yeah.
here's a couple things though to make sure and tell me if you're doing these
Yeah.
and how you're doing it. Are you doing mental rehearsal of how you want to feel before?
Hmm. No. And the reason that
Okay.
I'm going to say no is because you made me go, hmm. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not.
So that's
Yeah.
called coping planning, planning to cope. So I want you to do nothing to do with pickleball. It's I'm
Okay.
about to play pickleball and I feel
Hmm.
calm, like, relaxed and patient, 95 plus. So you set that intention before, more likely to do it during. And it's like if your next game's in a week and you do that 6 times, 5 minutes a day, that plus other things. But every day you're like, hey, next week at that game in this context, before the game, calm, patient. And you do that one day, another day. And then you get there, that's pretty more likely to happen the way you want it to. So you're going to
Yeah.
activate and show up as, optimist, you know, um, F1P, right? So I forgot the name for a second, but right. So it's like, and are you doing imagery of feeling the frustration of adversity? So I don't want you to imagine yourself make a mistake or get a beat, because that's not inherently helpful, but it's the positive power of a negative script that Todd calls it.
Mm.
And it's doing imagery of like, oh, I'm getting sucked into the results. And you're like, nope, embrace it. So, and you can definitely do lots of imagery if this is a big point. I'm going to put big in quote because that's
Yeah.
not good zooming, but it's like, hey, it's a whatever, like point,
Match point.
match
Game winning
point, those
point.
things. How am I responding? Let it happen. Confidence, swagger, and so really visualizing the context. And again, a big mistake with mental rehearsal is people focus too much on what they're doing and not how they feel while they do it. And then I want to be very clear on the different contexts and moments, and plan to cope with the pressures, distractions, and adversities, not just the actions themselves, but actually the responses to the context and preparing for that. And then the other mistake is not only doing it on game day. It's like I allude to, do it 5 days, that's like weeks, let alone more. But like you got a game, like maybe like as a pro athlete, I'd be like 5, if not 6 days a week, you're doing imagery to a degree, depending on how much you're playing, how long the season is. But
Yeah.
um, but it's like it's frequent, not just some like couple days a week. Like what? Like 2 days a week? Like go to the gym 2 days a week? Does it help that much? Like a little bit, not as much as if you go 5. So um so anyways, and then you add in those two strategies. So it sounds like you already have one using it to a
Yeah.
degree, and those are wrapped around the alter ego. Does that make sense? So we mentally prepare, set our intention for who we want to be,
Mm.
how we want to show up, including the planning to cope, then and how you want to feel. And then you use your reset routines to activate. And then afterwards you reflect, learn, and grow. Prepare, play, reflect. Prepare, get present and play, reflect, learn, and grow.